left of what's right.
New York, New York. All the Empire State politics you need to know in a few New York minutes. And representing the left, if you will, Richard Brodsky, former Assemblyman, senior fellow at Demos, and professor at NYU. And representing the right of the Republicans is John Cahill, former chief of staff to Governor Pataki. 3 questions, and we do it in a couple minutes apiece here. And the first one has to do with the governor's new casino plan. It would give New York's first 3 commercial gaming franchises to the upstate destinations. And there's a lot of ways to approach this. But first, tell everybody what's really going on, because we thought it was going to be 6 or 7 of them. Now they're upstate, they're not downstate. What's really going on? And then we'll get into the debate about whether it's a good or bad bet for the state.
It's the usual fight for control, where Cuomo wants to keep this in his own little hot little hands. But the real issue is, can you get this past the voters? And to do that, since downstate is very skeptical of casino gambling, and there are problems upstate as well, he's trying to arrange constituencies, the Indian nations, the upstate conservative vote, the downstate anti-gambling vote. That's the maneuvering that's going on now. In the end, whether you're for casino gambling or against it, ethically, economically, whatever, you're going to see a lot of pushing back and forth. Keep in mind what happened down in Queens the first go-round, where there was almost indictments of a lot of people who got their nose into where they shouldn't have gotten their nose to. This is dangerous stuff on a policy basis, ethical basis,
we'll
and
get
political
to ethical
basis.
in a second. The math now, is 3 the best he's going to get at this point? The idea of having a downstate casino, is that here and gone?
Well, I think he's, you know, as Richard mentioned, I think this is part of a negotiation as well on behalf of the governor. I think he's wisely using this as leverage with the Indian casinos upstate to get them to pony up, if you would, what's owed to the state, and also politically to make them a non-factor as he tries to get the casinos through the public in November. So I wouldn't be surprised at some point you do see an elevation in the number of casinos, because frankly, just from a state economic perspective, state revenue perspective, the money is not going to be in upstate casinos. It's going to be in downstate casinos. But I also think that the public has a real concern, the lack of trust in the legislature, frankly, about where these casinos go. And there's going to be a real fight. No, going back to the aqueduct and who stuck their nose and who's now under scrutiny from the federal authorities, there would be a real concern about the ethics and the trust in the downstate casinos.
Let me put you guys, citizens now, not guys who know the inside baseball. You vote up or down on this thing. Is this a good or a bad bet for New York? Does it really create jobs?
You know what? It is not an upstate economic development plan. Could it help on the margin in some communities where you have an influx of tourism? Yeah, it could help. But this is not a replacement for an economic development
in the
for upstate New
details.
York.
Until you see the plan, you don't really know if New York City is exempted. You don't really know where it's going to go.
On an upstate community, where is this? Show a city. Has Niagara been dramatically different since the casino?
And neither
has
is
Atlantic City. They haven't.
You're right. And for John Cahill, who chanced the word economic development when he gets up in the morning, to say that is notable. This is in trouble. Will yet to be seen.
All right. Well, that's a warm-up to the next one, which I know they won't agree on. Indian Point, controversial nuclear power plant, up for relicensing. By now, our audience knows the backstory to this. I would have thought a year ago, Richard, the chances would have been more so, the drumbeat would have been louder that it wouldn't get relicensed. The quiet, I think, is a good sign for Entergy.
Not at all. This plant is not cheaper. It is dangerous. The relicensing process is bogus. And most importantly, this is a place where Governor Cuomo is going to step in and make this part of his political legacy. Indian Point's going to close. It's going to close for the right reasons. It's not going to have a bad effect on New York's economy. Indeed, it'll have a good effect. And I think you'll see a dramatic change in the next 12 months.
You'd like that bet, wouldn't you?
Well, I can't see the NRC letting that happen. Yes. I think it will come down to a very interesting legal issue, which Richard and I can debate at some point. But the reality is, what's going to replace Indian Point? 2,000 megawatts of power. Where are you going to replace that at a cost to who's going to pay for the change?
Didn't we find out, though, when it did get shut down in '98, that the lights didn't go out in Westchester and the rates didn't go through the roof?
Listen, could you keep the lights on? Sure, you wouldn't have the same reliability. And every independent study from the ISO to the PSC has said that New York City, lower New York, needs this power unless you come up with an alternative replacement.
You're making it up.
How do you replace 2,000 megawatts of power?
The way that it's being done right now, by bringing it from where there's excess power right down here with transmission lines.
Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for bringing the transmission from upstate New York down to
that
low
power
state.
is cheaper than power
But you have to
generated
get it here. You have to upgrade the transmission
transmission
system.
costs
Who's going to pay
are
for it?
absorbable at a savings.
By whom? Who pays for it?
It's going to be built by private enterprise.
They're going
and
to
the
pick up the tab.
ratepayers.
The ratepayers are going to pick
they
up
pay
the
for
tab.
everything, but it's
right?
cheaper
And what impact
and
does
it's
that have
safer.
on economic development by already increasing the highest
I
energy
knew
rates
you'd
in
end
the
up at
country?
this place you started out.
And just so we know, the folks in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, are going to decide this. Not you folks at home, or not the guys at the table, or even the governor or county executive.
See,
for that
Richard doesn't
matter.
like hydrofracking, doesn't like nuclear. I guess going to be
The
left
ding
with
needs removed to the next
windmills
one.
and
I'm not
solar
so sure
panels
about
to run
you
our
either.
economy.
I guarantee we're not going to agree on the last one. Albany corruption scandal here. Every day, except maybe today here, there's a new name that gets added here if the day is young. But the point is, I've heard two different opinions on John, which is some say, you know what, good. This will drain the swamp here. This is a good thing for Albany. And others say, are you kidding me? The opinion of this capital district is so low right now, we can't afford this level of beating. Where do you fall?
It can only be a positive thing if positive steps are taken to reinsure the public trust. And frankly, Richard won't want to hear this, but this is a legislative issue, okay? 32 members of the state legislature in the last 10 years have been arrested, indicted. 32, okay? Excuse me. All right? That says something that the legislature has not been able to police themselves when it comes to corruption. They are held accountable only onto themselves. There's no independent outside source reviewing their activities, their outside activities. As I said before, they're not subject to FOIL. There's no transparency in how the legislature works.
There's no
so unless the
transparency in the way
legislature
the governor
takes it upon,
works.
yes, there is. Unless the legislature takes it upon itself to change how it operates, they won't get back the public trust.
I'm not going to defend the indefensible. These indictments, by identifying and if they're convicted, convicting criminals is a good thing. There's no tolerance for this stuff. The notion that there's somehow an institutional basis for this, 25% of the last governors of the state of New York have gone out in disgrace.
But there's one thing with being a permanent guy being on the table.
50% of the controllers. If you want to use statistics,
you
want to use you had your shot. Hold on.
Go ahead.
If you want to use statistics, that's what it says. This is a problem that should not be used to weaken one branch of the government. We should deal with it. We should clean it out.
But here's my question.
Make sure people
but here's
do
my
jobs.
question. Right now, no one's going to debate the person driving this is a U.S. attorney.
Right.
And in a lot of people's eyes, that's an indictment on Albany in a different way. In two things. One is the governor says this week, you know what? If the legislature doesn't do something about it, I am going to institute an ethics
Give the power
probe.
to investigate to the Attorney General. I've said that in 2010, if anybody was listening.
Yes.
It's a good idea, and it will enable law enforcement on the state level
But
to
I
do
already hear the Albany DA saying he can't do anything about it. I hear the governor saying, you better do something about it, Albany. Whose job is it to police
There is
it?
no one's job. And right now, it's the job of the legislative leaders to patrol, if you would, their members. And you know what? What's unfortunate about this, Richard, is that every member of the legislature gets tarnished by what's been happening. Good people like Richard, yourself, and people who really are in politics
There's
for the
no
right
question
reason.
that
everybody's
that
being tarnished,
tarnishing is
and the leadership continues
it's not
to
up
do
to
nothing.
leadership to indict people criminally. There's got to be real law enforcement.
Oh, Richard, look at the case with
the AG.
Look at the case with Lopez as the
just
speaker.
one second.
Two against
They
one
haven't
is
done
not fair.
Here's my
nothing to
question.
hold the members
Shelley
accountable.
Silver says yesterday, we've got the laws in the books to do this.
We do.
Then why aren't we doing something about it?
We are. These guys are getting indicted.
But that's the U.S.
The
attorney
big
who's doing it.
problems in ethics in Albany are legal.
Richard,
they
why,
are campaign finance.
Why is the system,
they are the
why
use
is the
of
system
Wilson
set up to
Papulas.
allow this corruption to happen in the first
is
place?
not
We
set up-
shouldn't have the U.S. attorney having to live in Albany to weed out corruption.
We shouldn't have it. The system is not set up that way. Deal with the legal corruption, John. The thing that the big money guys that you know so well foster. Campaign finance reform.
This is not
and
about
Wilson
campaign
Papulas reform.
finance, Richard. It's much deeper than that. It's the interworkings of the legislative process.
I heard the bell.
Their
Yes, you
outside
did.
income, their lack of
I'm going
transparency.
to pull them off now. All right. This was good. I love the debate here, and there was certainly a lot of it. We will have this segment, as always, back next week, same time, same bat channel.